Hi! We're talking about Byler here, right? So this video is everyone can watch this video and don't leave, but I think this video is more for the skeptic people or people who have doubt about Byler. I'm here to explain to you why, in my opinion, Byler is set up but using different points that we would not usually use. So first of all, I want to talk about the narrative behind Stranger Things, like the logic behind the way they write and the message they want to bring to the show. Second, about the actors, the promotion, and the damage control that is going around. 3. How to recognize and see Byler. The fourth point and the last one, the show. Using script and canon events and the canon characters arc. I am not going to use any small details like the CGI about the little art in their eyes. I'm not gonna talk about that. I'm going to talk about the very big evidence for people who think we only rely on very small detail. I want to bring the fact that there's enormous, gigantic building type of evidence for Byler, which is I don't mind people not shipping Byler. It's okay if you don't think the relationship is good, especially after all the hurt that Will went through because of this and how he sacrificed himself in season 4, for example. I don't mind that. You can think that. Keep in mind that it's what Will wants. What Will needs is Mike. He says it so himself. So now we can move on the first point, the narrative behind Stranger Things and the logic behind it. It's a show for outcast, about outcast, that is meant to uplift them and not silence them. It's a show for minorities, about minorities, and is not meant to reduce a character as a minority to be sad about who he is. So this needs to be understood. The first point is that making Will rejected, sad about his sexuality in the end of season 5 doesn't make any sense narratively because that's not what they want to give you as a message. And this needs to be understood. It's a show, a coming of age, a show for the heart, to the heart, and it's very important to understand this. The characters are not real. Like I said, everything is intentional. Those are not real people. Everything is written with a purpose, especially in Stranger Things, which is not a TV show, a typical TV show. It's a show full of behind meaning and foreshadowing and everything that is very deeply written since season 1. Things in season 1 still applies to some things in season 4. The parallels continue, everything is still linked, and especially in season 5, when we are going to have all the climax and all the explanations, everything will come back to this. It has a storyline, the characters follow that storyline hand in hand with the supernatural plot of Stranger Things. What would be the logic into introducing a love triangle at the end of the story if it holds no weight or possibilities for it to happen? But I have to say it, the love triangle, why install a Cyrano trope at the end of season 4? Why install this for season 5 and a love triangle for season 5 if the original couple stays together and the minority end up being punished or sad? Especially when this person is the main character and everything revolves around him. Not only this, but the supernatural plot and the love triangle enters each other. They're connected deeply. And also, why would we introduce Will's love for Mike as an official plot in the season prior to the one where he gets attacked by Vecna and possessed again, from what we see in the trailer? What was the reason to establish that Will is deeply in love with Mike and needs Mike if it's not going to come back in season 5? That's my question for all Byler skeptics. I need an answer to that, and a good one, because there is no actual real reason to do that unless they actually explore this love triangle in season 5. The official relation to the first shadow. Henry is taking a first time and go out because of Patty's love for him, and he managed to break off the Mind Flyer. But the second time it's not enough because he doesn't have enough platonic love, and Patty's love for him is no longer enough to break him off, so he's officially taken by the Mind Flayer. And that's also what happens with Will in some kind of way. In season 2 he's taken the first time and he managed to break off the Mind Flyer. But is going to be taken a second time in season 5. So to break off Vecna, it will need something greater this time, something that is more powerful than the one he had before. And what is more powerful than the love that Will feels for Mike, because he needs Mike? It's very powerful. That love is very powerful. And what's more powerful than that, than this? What is more powerful than the gay boy who thinks that he has no chance to be with the one he loves, but end up having a reciprocation to it? And like, what's more powerful than that? This special relationship between Mike and Will is very present since the start of the show. That you like it or that you don't, the show revolves around the fact of being loved by your friends, your family, and your partner, which is officially making you have powers against Vecna. You cannot separate the two plots. You cannot say that Byler won't happen because it's not a romance story, when we know since the first 4 seasons that love saves the day. Don't ignore the plot just because it benefits your narrative. Now, let's talk about the actors, the promo, and the damage control. I'm also going to mention the Duffers brothers as directors and writers of the show because it's very important to take it to account. First thing we have to talk about is the evident dislike of Milevin. Unless you're Millie Bobby Brown, I can promise you that there's a lot of evidence about the actors not liking this relationship at all. Simply because first, they're not healthy in their relationship, so it's kind of annoying, but they often compare it, for example, to Lucas and Max, which, by Caleb's word, a more mature relationship, and is completely different from Mike and Eleven, who are still in the teenage stage of their relationship. You know, it's not the same.
Tomorrow. What? That's very serious. Yeah. We're basically going to get married tomorrow.
What?
That's basically how they act on the show.
Sure.
And I think it's how they act on the show. And I think
I feel that I love Lucas and Max's relationship. It's not like 11 and Mike's, in that teenage relationship dynamic. Their love is very, it's real. Like, they don't have to be lovey-dovey to show their affection and their how much they care about each other, and their true bond is like their friendship. Like, they're not together because of like intimacy or just like love. They really care about each other and see each other for who they are. And you really can see that in season 4.
Not only this, but the directors and the actors have a lot of care when it comes to talking about Will's feelings for Mike, and they also stay a bit of silence. They also have, this a little bit too loud silence about what Mike will do with this. And this is very telling, because when it happened for When Claire and people thought that they were going to get together, the directors shot that up very quickly, which is not the case for the Duffers. Instead, they stay silent, they talk about Will's love, but not too much, and they also do not talk about Mike's feelings for Will and where he stands and all of that. Because if they talk about it, it is going to be a spoiler for season 5, because that you like it or not, that it's in game or not, that it's rejection or not, this is going to be explored. Because as Noah's Word said once in an interview, Will's relationship is going to be a major plot into season 5, so it's inevitable. You cannot pretend that it's not going to happen, because it is, in fact, going to happen. Simply. The Duffers are fans of queer shows, and they have a lot of shows and movies that they've seen in queer history. They know what they're doing when it comes to LGBTQ people, and they're not doing things out of their ass. That needs to be talked about. Their favorite show growing up is Dawson Creek, which also includes a gay couple, which they made a parallel to, by the way, multiple times in the show, but especially while recreating the gay bar of Dawson Creek, which I find really funny because, but I think it's one of my favorite piece of evidence. It's the Duffers actually paralleling Mike and Will to actual queer shows and queer movies. This is undeniable. You cannot deny this, just like you cannot deny the Eyewitness parallel. Eyewitness is a mini-series about a young gay couple who witnesses a triple murder, and they do anything to not be outed in their small town. And there's this shot from Eyewitness and this shot from Stranger Things. And let me talk to you about this scene. Lucas here is the one who's paralleling Mike, and he's at this point in a relationship with a girl to hide the fact that he is gay. And he also has a lot of internalized homophobia. Because of this, in this scene, if I'm not wrong, he says something along the line of, "I am not gay like you." Talking to Philip, which is the one standing in Will's place, is the gay one, and, you know, they're fighting. And they're in love, is the gay couple. Evident and undeniable parallel between a very explicit queer miniseries and Stranger Things. About Will, who is canonically in love with Mike, and whose Mike behavior has been very weird, and also happens to have a girlfriend, and also happened to say something along the line of, "It is not my fault you don't like girls." And what I want to say is that, yes, technically the lines are not the same. I'm not gay like you, and it's not my fault you don't like girls. It's not the exact same, but the connotation is the same. The implicit line is the same. The two characters include themselves in what they're saying. I am not gay like you. It is not my fault that you do not like girls. They portray being gay as a negative thing in here, in the tone they're using and how they talk about it. The two are not exactly the same, but they mean the same. The inevident parallel of Eyewitness, which is for me one of the biggest Byler proof of history. Because what the heck, and who thought to do this? Exactly. They parallel the exact same thing, and it's insane in my opinion. I have to talk about the evident mess up about Noah Schnapp, which is the master of spoilers, right? Hand in hand with Tom Holland. He got talked to because of what he said. The Hub Satisfied video happened to be a video taken in secret. This interview was never meant to go out and was never meant to be published in the first place. So he took a little bit more liberties, but it kind of caught him up the ass and he got yelled at, which I find really funny. I do not support the cast in any kind of way. I'm going to repeat that myself, and I'll say it in every video I talk about Stranger Things. I do not support the cast. The cast do very bad things, especially Brett. I don't think we are mean enough to Brett. Kill Murray. Just for Brett. I do not care. But directly after his mess up about the Hab Satisfied, really Stranger Things added a little photo on Twitter, you know, to steer a bit of doubt, because right now, Noah, you spoiled a bit lot, like right now, it's a bit, you know, you said too much. Again. There's a lot of promo that talks about Me11, but in very different lights. For example, Finn is talking about Me11 and explaining how they're going back to their Season 1 roots. The way they were platining in Season 1 has to be mentioned. They're going back to a less romantic relationship is what it means. Like, yes, that's where they were headed in Season 1, but they had a mission in Season 1, and their main focus was not their relationship, it was finding Will. And that's what they were concerned about, finding Will. And weirdly, Will is again the victim in Season 5, which I think is very funny, was that we go back to Season 1 roots because of this. But shortly after he says this, in the same interview, he's talking about the fact that 11 and Mike have two different life paths. Yes, the first half of what I just said was being taken a lot by the Milevans to say, "Oh look, it was always meant to be them, blah blah blah." But at the same time, he says something that is quite telling. Their goals, they're not the same. They don't have the same life path, they don't believe at the same thing, they don't act the same way, they don't have a lot in common, and because of that, their paths are diverging instead of connecting. And also, talking about path, in Season 4, we have this close interview of Finn talking about Mike as a character, trying to find and to follow the normal path. But we know in Season 4, the path cannot be about being a nerd and playing D&D, because he indeed do that in Season 4. So what is the path he is talking about? let that sink in. When he's talking about the normal path, he's not talking about D&D and his nerdy shit. He's talking about him catering and forcing himself to stay in a relationship that does not work out, which is the normal path. I think a girlfriend is the normal path for Mike. Also, Millie Bobby Brown doesn't seem to like the ending of her character so much after she said in 2023 that she would like Elle and Mike to get married. But then, now, in her interviews, instead of talking about getting married with Mike, she's saying, he doesn't want him, he doesn't want me, making fake kisses at Noah. Clearly here, which is my next point in this section, they are pushing this love fucking triangle very hard to the point where the public opinion about Byler and Milevin completely shifted. Let me explain to you why I mean that. The promo was here to change public opinions after season 4. It goes without saying that Stranger Things fans knows about Byler for a long time, but the public opinion on it and the general audience doesn't. And that's why the promo is here to set up the love triangle with a lot of love triangle imaginary that are subtle but here to make an appearance. The public opinion was the impossibility of Byler happening and we are all delusional. Now, the public opinion is what happening with Milevin? Are they going to be a cute couple? Are they going to get married? This is not the public opinion anymore. The public opinion now today is, are they going to make Byler canon, or are they going to stay with making Milevin, and are they queer baiting? The queer baiting question is slowly arriving in medias to show that we are not in fact delusional. This is bringing up in the news. They are, if they do in fact queer bait, which would be going against the entire message of their story, by the way, everyone would be up their asses, because the news, especially queer news, have taken upon this. It's no longer a ship that people ship on their free time. It's an actual possible route in Stranger Things. Not only this, but this, like I said, I talked about it, but a few years ago, Noah Schnapp, before the whole fiasco, I was often watching the interviews, so I was very interested. But it has always been a very die-hard Byler since a lot of time, and you would always often mention it and play with the fans with it. But since season 4, it's been more and more silent about this. And the second he talks about Byler and Will's feelings for Mike and what can happen because of it, he suddenly is panicking and has to restrain what he is saying. This shift into how he can talk about Byler is incredibly telling. This is subtle, but it's telling that he cannot say anything about where this is going when he used to be a pretty open person about the ship. Now, let's go on to point 3. Point 3 is how to recognize and see Byler. It's going to be a very short part, but it's important. You're Milevin and you become a Byler, but you're not a Byler becoming a Milevin. It shows that when we talk about the fact that when you see it, you cannot unsee it, it's because the things are kind of hidden. You know, just like the parallels of Eyewitness and Dawson Creek. If you don't have those queer representation in history of media, you would not be able to see it. But if you know it and you see a scene, it makes a direct connection into your brain, which most general audience doesn't have because they do not watch queer medias. Now, you have to understand that you have to add the 80s goggles. You have to add the 80s glasses on your eyes. This is the same period of time where the AIDS crisis was in full blow and where it only is really starting for queer people to finally fight back. This is only the start of a gigantic amount of queer history of fighting for our own rights. Like, you need to understand that this is only the start of this period, so you cannot expect Mike to give a lot of clues. You cannot expect the gay characters to give a lot of clues, because it was never meant to be like that. This is not 2025. People cannot expect Mike to just come out as gay and to say I'm gay or to give very big clues that he is gay, because this is simply not gonna happen, just like Will didn't either. We know that Will is in love with Mike because of Elle's letter that portrays the painting as a romantic one, but also because of his speech in the van using Elle's name as his own on his own feeling. This is how we know it. But he never explicitly said that he was gay, and he never explicitly acted upon those feelings. One of my advice is to push through, rewatch Stranger Things with the idea of trying to understand where Mike could be in love with Will, and find clues of homosexuality or bisexuality in Mike. Now, which is making me a bridge to go about the show. Mike is the one that makes things weird with Will. It's not Will that makes things weird with Mike. It's Mike that is unable to talk to Will and hug Will. It's not Will who is not excited to see Mike and not able to hug Mike. He is able to do it because he's aware of his own feelings, and even if he's repressing them, he wants to act as a best friend just like they always did. It's Mike who is acting weird towards this, but we know that Mike is unaware of Will's feelings. So what is exactly happening on his side, and why is he acting so weird when an episode before we saw him hug Dustin out of excitement, which also should happen here. He should be excited to see his best friend again, and we know that he still holds a lot of sentiment for his best friend, that he misses him because he says so during his apology to Will. So what was stopping you from actually hugging Will when you saw Will being inviting? A lot of the argument would go against this was the fact that they haven't talked really, so it's a bit awkward. But no, this is not a valid opinion, because it would have been awkward if Will was not excited, if Will was not inviting Mike in a hug. But that's not what we see. Even though they haven't really talked, we see a very, very excited Will and inviting Will to open his arm to hug Mike, which Mike does not reciprocate. Now, obviously, because I talk about the greeting scene, so I also have to talk. Obviously, I'm entering the part where I talk about the show, the scripts, and all of that. So I'm going to add evidence that is on the script, and that is also big evidence. This is not small thing hidden. This is things that are in the show implemented, by the way. If you want to know where I get the script, I'm going to try to put the website under this video. The scripts of season 3, season 4 only are in pre-order now and are only going to get shipped and officialized after volume 1 in the 6th or 9th of October. Not October, November. No, not November, December. I'm in Hawkins right now, the time is mixing up. You can find the previews, and that's where I found the scripts. By the way, the lines and all that. I'm not inventing anything. This is real. This is a real script that you can buy very soon. And also, to me, in my opinion, this is a very big Byler evidence, because what are they hiding in season 3 and season 4 that foreshadows and that needs to go out only after volume 1? This is the scene where he arrives. Mike smiles, then at long last he noticed the rest of the party waiting for him. Will in particular seems awkward, clutching that painting. It's like exciting but awkward, just like we see in the scene. This is the original script, and there's going to be modification. Those lines are not going to be the exact same thing as that ended up being in the actual scene. This is after he greets 11. Mike, well, what a coincidence. You guys are here too. Yeah, thank God he didn't say this. That would have been so awkward. Oh my God. Jonathan say, hey dude, and Will say, hey. And here it says, all old friends share a quick, awkward half hug. It's not exactly the warm welcome that Will was hoping for. So, as we know this, Will was actually waiting and excited to see Mike, and he was waiting for a warm welcome. As Mike pulls away from Will, it clocks the painting. Mike says, what's that? Oh, just some painting I'm working on. It's nothing. So we see Will backtracking because of how awkward Mike was being to Will, and how he made this awkward half hug happen, which was very weird. And the line after that is, before Mike can press further, is cut off by someone else. It's not the exact same thing and exact same scene as it happened in the show, but the intention is to understand that Mike saw that painting. And I have to understand, what you have to understand is that 11 was talking about the painting in the letter. This is not a new thing to him. It was curious, and it became awkward real fast. So even the script doesn't exactly explain his intention. What we know is that he saw the painting and he was like, I want to know more. I want to know more. Going back to that rain fight scene, Mike's intensity towards Will is the weird aspect of their relationship. Mike has an inability to stay true to himself when he's in front of Hell, and he has this kind of a act of pretending that he is not the one who he's supposed to be, and he's been doing that for a lot of time. We know that because of this phrase that Eddie say in the beginning about Mike wearing what his parents gave him to wear and not what he likes to wear, which is pretty obvious to the fact that Mike did not, and at this point, do not know who he is himself. It's pretty obvious of when he also arrived in California. His outfit was made to make it seem like he bought that outfit in the airport just to cater to the California norms. When he arrives here, he just tried to pretend to be someone else again. But to go back to Mike's weird intensity towards Will, it's that in season 3, for example, we have this comparison, this very explicit comparison about the fact that the scenes of breakup with 11 is portrayed as a laughing matter, as something unimportant, and Elle is even laughing about it. She's happy to be independent and to finally making her own rules. Mike says, don't worry, he's gonna crawl back to you in no time, or something like that. But it doesn't happen, actually. He lies, and instead of it, he criticizes Hell, calling her a different species, and is like seen as gross. Like Lucas is farting and Mike is burping, like almost like he doesn't care. He's frustrated, but he doesn't care that much, and he's like, what am I supposed to do? I don't know. In contrary to the scenes with Will, where Will gets offended by his friend's mockery, directly when Will is saying enough, Mike is apologizing, and he's following Will out while apologizing. And we know his tone of voice completely changes when he's with Will and he's trying to apologize, which is a very also telling moment of season 3 and the difference between his argument with 11 and his arguments with Will. Yeah, so there's a different type of coloring, different type of importance that circles back to season 4. Will scenes with Mike are very warm, full of lies, and often reflecting on Will when we have Mike's POV. And in contrary, in season 4, the scenes with 11 and Mike are not full of warmth, they're very dark. And again, it's aligning that one is bringing relief, while is the other one is actually weighting down and is not relieving at all. Mike is the one adding a romantic undertone in his relationship with Will during his argument. So there's only 2 arguments between Will and Mike. The rain scene, which I already talked about, with the difference with eyewitness, and the romantic undertone of Mike talking about himself, including himself of, it's not my fault you don't like girls. But let's talk about the Rinkomania scene, which is quite telling. I mean, without the script, it's quite telling, but the script is also a very big proof of what is happening in this scene. So I only have the part where it starts with, that's just not true. And Will says, you've called maybe a couple times. It's been over a year, Mike. Meanwhile, Elle has like a book of letters from you. Mike says, that's different. She's my girlfriend, Will. And girlfriend's in italic, which is here to like mark the word. And Will responds, and us. And this is where I ask you to take your 80s goggles on and not the 2025 goggles on. Because in 2025, someone saying that could totally be interpreted as something romantic. But in the 80s, if you are a straight guy, there's no way it's even a possibility. So Mike thinking about this in a romantic way is weird. Let me follow that. Mike responds, in the original script, it says, we're friends, Will. Friends. Here, it's quite telling what is meaning. When he heard Will say "and us," he thought it meant it in a romantic way. Mike linked that to a romantic undertone, which was not what Will meant, because he responded, "We used to be best friend." So in the scene, the official scene that they put on your screen, he says, we're friends, instead of we're friends, we'll friends. He says, we're friends, we're friends. It's the exact same thing. He's like making a point that they're only friends. So why are you asking this? When it was not Will's question at all. Mike took it in a romantic way, or at least in a romantic undertone, and this is even more empathized by what the script is saying just after. An awkward beat here as this sinks in. Mike needs to take a bit, there's a stop, because it sinks in his brain that Will never meant it in a romantic way, and he's like, oh, that's what happens. That's the scene. That's the script. That's not me. Talking about Eddie, Mike blushes at Eddie. Canonically blushes at Eddie. Mike canonically blushes at Eddie. Script. To prove it. Again, you can find it yourselves. And you can totally argue to say that this is how Mike feels embarrassed and that's why he's blushing. But actually, I would say yes if it wasn't those looks that he gave to Eddie just before he said it. In those scenes, he's not embarrassed, he's just happy. You can also see the very distinguishedly different between how Dustin is just happy and laughing and how Mike looks at Eddie. The emotional weight that Byler holds compared to Oliver friendship, there was this big meme of people using Byler lines for Dustin and Lucas, or Mike saying them to Lucas or Dustin. And it was just weird things, which clearly shows that, oh, they really have a special relationship, and it's not just like any other relationship. You cannot just act like they're normal, just like Dustin and Lucas. Byler can be compared to actual couples and not actual friendship. You cannot compare Byler to Stubborn, for example, to Steve and Robin. You cannot compare to them because Steve and Robin are completely platonic. And Mike and Will does not compare to them at all, and I think it's pretty telling that you cannot use those as a parallel when it's one gay kid and a supposedly straight one. They all they can talk to each other without even saying words. They just need to look at each other, and they also have a lot of hearts to heart. Mike is comfortable with Will enough to talk about his wrongdoing and to take accountability in what he says and what he does. And that same goes for Will, who takes accountability and who apologize and who have hearts to hearts with each other. I want to talk about the season 5 spoilers and the fact that we know there's going to be a Mike, Will, and Jonathan flashback in episode 4 of them as kids. What is provoking that? Probably Vecna from what we saw from episode 4, but we know that in episode 1 from the sources that we get that Will is kind of trying to distance himself from his own feelings for Mike, while Mike is still here trying to protect Will anyways. Someone says that they were closer than what they were in season 2. How do you even know that? How do you even do that? I don't know, but they're apparently closer than they were in season 2, and Mike is on the front line kinda on protecting Will, and they called Will Mike's shadow, whatever that means. Now we'll go for the obvious and a very big spoil. In episode 1, Will indeed saw Robin and Vicky kiss in episode 1. And I want to talk about this why. They, in season 5, established a queer couple kissing and dirty talking directly in episode 1. Here, they're making a statement. We have a way of writing this story. We have a storyline and we're going to follow it. And we do not care of your homophobic ass. Do you understand? Like, this is literally where they're going. Establishing Raviki as a couple directly into episode 1 It is a big statement. They're not waiting the last episode to make sure that people keep watching. No, they don't care. They don't cater to what the studio wants. They don't cater to what the audience want. They do what they want. And we know that Robin is going to be a mentor to Will. We also know that Vicky, Robin, and her ex-boyfriend parallels Mike, Eleven, and Will. Robin thought that she never will be able to be with Vicky because Vicky had a boyfriend. But in fact, she indeed got with Vicky because Vicky and her boyfriend didn't work out. And she is here, and she's going to be here to make Will understand that she does in fact have the right to find happiness, and being gay is not a sin. And I think this being introduced directly into episode 1, that Will saw it, and his journey is all about accepting himself, is telling about what's going to happen at the end when we parallel the love triangle to Rafiki and our ex-boyfriend, to Will, Elle, and Mike. The scene on the rooftop of Eleven talking is not a love confession of them, it's them talking about the group, Vecna, about Will, and the 3 waterfall is real, but it's from what I gathered a way for Mike to comfort and to say that one day they'll be happy or some shit like that with the whole group and not just with 11. This is not an inherently loving moment. And 11, I mean, she's worried about Vecna. You can see that in the shot. Which is very funny now that we know that, and they use this image as a way to make doubts for people, in my opinion. We know also that Lucas is calling them a lovebirds, which I have to remind people to not get doubts over. They're still together. Yes, I mean, of course he's going to call them lovebirds. Lucas is someone that teases a lot. It doesn't surprise me that he's saying that in the episode. It's the first episode. I remind people that Nancy and Steve were still in love in episode 1 of season 2. They are still together. They broke up only later on. So 1 episode is not enough to know what is going to exactly happen. But from my point of view, and the fact that they made Will see Ravik kiss instead of just making it happen at the end as a shock value and to be like, to make sure to get the audience to stay, it's a very explicit way of showing that Will's journey with his sexuality is actually coming to a close, and in a positive way and not in a bad way. He's not gonna get silenced. He's not gonna get casted on the side. And if the leak about Will asking Robin, how do you know someone likes you, is real, if he actually does say that, Byler is canon. If this is actually a show about minority, and if the goal was to make Will win, instead, like paralleling Henry, the fact that Henry did not win and got taken over by the Mind Flyer, I think it would be very beautiful for this time to make Will win against the Mind Flyer, and that, you know, he ends up falling in love and being in love with the person he needs, and the person that doesn't make him feel like a mistake. I also have to say that D&D is coming back full force into season 5, and Mike is using this as a motivation, as to make himself feel brave and to go and to plan. You know, this is using D&D as an imagery. The weight of Will's word, they're big, and the real Will is going to be big, mind you. I'm not joking. And obviously I did not mention it. This is a very big point. The way Mike looks at Will. He doesn't look like that and talks like that to anyone else. Let's stop kidding around. Let's stop lying around. He talks to Will in a very tender way, in a very understanding way. It's compassionate. It's sweet. Like, do I have to act it out for you? It's only 90 miles away. Why?
Vegas? As long as Susie's coordinates are right, about another 90 miles. Why?
I didn't say it. You didn't have to. Did I? Come on! Come on! And them establishing the kiss with Vicky directly in episode 1 means that we are directly entering the queer aspect of the show, especially with Will being the main character, being a gay guy who doesn't accept himself. I think we're directly jumping to the subject, and even if they're not kissing until episode 7 or 8, it doesn't matter, because we'll have clues and we'll see the development. They cannot just act like it's not here. That's why they made Raviki kiss directly, so they could jump into Robin having the mentor role for Will. It wouldn't make sense for the show to make the gay kid have a slow burn rejection after entering a love triangle in season 4 and making it even bigger in season 5. That doesn't make any sense. This is not how love triangles works. So yeah, this is the end of the video. I hope you liked it. I tried to do something a bit different than what I see the most, and I didn't want to repeat myself too much. Like the rain seed, I use it a lot in this video because it's, to me, even if it seems very sad, it's to me the most Byler proof that can proving in the world. I'm letting you go now. I hope you enjoyed this video. Thank you for watching. Thank you for coming. Thank you for liking if you do and commenting if you do. I hope you have a great day, night, whatever. Goodbye.